We just had a few notes before we got started.
Sure.
So just yeah, thank you everybody so much for joining us. This is our final session in the series. So we're going to be sending in a feedback form at the end of the session to see how you enjoyed the series as a whole, if you came to other sessions, or just even some feedback on this sessions. If there's any other topics that may be of interest to you. Yeah, and then so Sophie will be and Lisette will be moderating the chat. If you have any questions at any time, please just let us know. You can also just raise your physical or virtual hand, and folks will be there to support you. So yeah, I'll hand it over to Ben. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. So thank you for spending your lunchtimes with me. Today, we're going to be talking about toileting skills and how we can build independence and teach them. So in case you didn't attend any of the other sessions, my name is Ben Clark, and I am a registered behavior analyst. I work here at Community Living Toronto in our home management program. And this is a program where we provide free behavior consultation for children and youth under the age of 21 that have a diagnosis of an intellectual disability. So it's a really great program. It's free of cost, no cost to you, for all children in Toronto diagnosed with an intellectual disability. So you can find out more information about this at our website, cltoronto.ca. And perhaps we have a flyer. We can link it in the chat. Maybe if we can get that up, that would be perfect as well. And there's a QR code where you can apply for those services. Hannah said a little housekeeping. So questions throughout the presentation, go for it. There'll be some questions at the end of the presentation as well. Yeah, so let me just go to my next slide here. Perfect. Okay. So before we dive into all the details, I want to give you just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. So first, we'll review practical strategies for teaching toileting, and this includes how to prepare for toileting and how to create a consistent routine. Then we're going to look at how collecting simple information or data, as we behavior analysts talk about it, can help guide decision making. So understanding your child's pattern can make it easier to identify the best practices, the best times, and how to adjust your toileting schedule if needed. We'll also discuss ways to encourage success, respond to accidents, and support independence over time. And so my goal today is really to provide practical ideas that you and your families can take home to adapt to your child's individual needs. Okay? So a few things to keep in mind. Sorry. So before we get into any toileting strategies, I do want to just acknowledge that toileting can look different for every child, whether they have an intellectual disability or whether they are typically developing. So some children may learn very quickly, where others may need more support, more repetition, or a slower pace. So progress is often very gradual, and setbacks are completely normal during learning. The second thing I want to talk about is just that consistency matters. So toileting skills are more likely to develop when routines, expectations, and responses remain predictable over time. Some children and families benefit from additional support. So if progress is difficult, or if your child has complex communication, behavioral, or medical needs, working with a registered behavior analyst like me, or any other professional can help develop a plan that is individualized to your child's toileting needs. So another really good plug for our home management program. We do a lot of toileting programs, so if you need assistance, definitely to reach out to us. Okay, let's talk a little bit also about some medical factors and some physical factors. So they can have a major impact on the success of your child's toileting program. So constipation is the number one thing that can make it difficult for a child to recognize when they need to use the toilet. So this is a pretty common barrier that we see. Other factors such as pain, medication side effects, sleep difficulties, and hydration can all affect progress. So if a child suddenly starts having more accidents, begins with holding, appears uncomfortable, or progress stalls unexpectedly, it may be worthwhile speaking with your healthcare provider before changing your child's toileting routine. So sometimes addressing these underlying medical issues can make toileting much more successful. Also, just going to touch on some previous experience and how that can affect toileting. So, this is important to remember that toileting isn't not always just learning a new skill. For children, previous experience can affect how they respond to toileting routines. So, for example, a child who has experienced constipation, painful bowel movements, or has a history of urinary tract infections may begin to associate the bathroom with discomfort, and they don't want to go in there. They're afraid of the toilet, things like that. Some children may also have sensory sensitivities that make the bathroom environment very difficult or overwhelming for them. There's lots of loud noises. We got flushing, we got hand dryers, we got a lot of bright lights, echoes. All of those things can make the toileting environment aversive for your child. Another common challenge is when a child has spent many years successfully using diapers or pull-ups. So in these situations, the child has learned that elimination occurs in those garments only. So moving to underwear in the toilet may require some additional teaching and support there as well. So when these factors present, progress may be slower, it may be more gradual, and individualized approaches may be needed. So understanding a child's history can help families choose strategies that will make toileting more successful for them. Okay, readiness signs. So before we even begin teaching toileting, it can be helpful to look for signs that a child might be ready to learn. So these signs are not a guarantee of success, and they are not required before training begins, okay? Instead, they can help us understand what strengths a child already has and where additional support may be needed. On the physical side, some children may begin to stay dry for longer periods. They may develop more predictable bowel movement routines. They might be able to sit more comfortably on the toilet for short periods of time. So these skills can create more opportunities for successful practice. We may also see different communication related signs. So a child may start noticing when they are wet or when they are soiled. They may ask for their diaper to be changed or communicate needs using speech, sign, pictures, gestures, or any other sort of communication system. So these behaviors suggest that the child is becoming more aware of their body and learning how to communicate important information to others. So readiness signs can help guide planning and where we need to focus our interventions. Thank you. In addition to these physical and communication signs, there are a few learning skills that can support success during toilet training as well. So, children who can follow simple instructions, tolerate brief waiting periods, and participate in routines may find it easier to learn all of the steps involved in toileting. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those are. So these skills help children benefit from teaching opportunities, practice new behaviors, and participate in consistent routines throughout the day. Some children might have an interest in being independent, so they're, motivated to learn these skills. I went to the bathroom all by myself. All of those things can be very motivating, especially when their success is accompanied by praise as well. Given all of this at the same time, it's important not to think of these skills as strict requirements. So children with intellectual and developmental disabilities may not demonstrate all of these skills, and some may never demonstrate them in a way that a typically developing child would. So readiness helps us individualize instruction. It should not be used to exclude children from learning opportunities. So the presence of readiness signs can help guide planning and identify areas where support may be needed, but they should not determine whether a child has an opportunity to learn. So rather than asking a child if a child is ready enough, it is often more useful to ask what supports they need, what accommodations we can make, and what teaching strategies we can use to help that child be successful. Okay, toileting, not just one thing, but a whole collection of things. So when we think about toilet training, we often focus on whether a child is having accidents or whether they're using the toilet successfully, right? This is the number one thing we think of. But underneath those outcomes are many individual skills that all need to be learned and coordinated together. So a child first needs to recognize that their body is telling them that they need to go. They then need to communicate that need, get to the bathroom, manage their clothing, sit on the toilet, and successfully urinate or have a bowel movement. And then after that, we have a whole slew of hygiene things such as wiping and flushing and washing hands before they exit the bathroom and return to whatever they were doing. So some children may already be successful with many of these skills and only need support with one or two steps. For example, a child may recognize that they need the bathroom but have difficulty communicating it. Another child may communicate successfully but need help managing their clothing or learning to sit on the toilet. This is one reason progress can look different from child to child. So instead of thinking about toilet training as this all or nothing, pee in the toilet or accident sort of thing, it can be helpful to think about it in a way which individualized skills are developing and which skills still need support. A child does not need to master every step before training begins, but we can focus on multiple steps at once if needed, right? So we can be teaching them to sit on the toilet, we can be teaching them how to manage their clothing, how to communicate, all of those things somewhat simultaneously. So a child can still be making progress even if they are not fully toilet trained yet. So there's lots of little successes, right? So things like staying dry for longer, sitting willingly on the toilet, pulling their pants down, requesting the bathroom, walking independently to the bathroom. Those are all part of toilet training in the collection the series that we're talking about. Okay, where do we start? Toilet training can feel overwhelming, especially when you recognize how many skills and steps are involved in it. So the good news is that successful toilet training usually happens, just one little step at a time. So in this presentation, we're going to follow this roadmap of prepare, track patterns, build a schedule, teach and reinforce, and then build independence. Um, so we're going to go through that roadmap right now, and we'll talk about each step. Perfect. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so before we even start toilet training, the first thing I want to do is talk about preparation for it. So as we discussed on the previous slide, toileting involves many different skills. So during preparation, we're thinking about which skills your child has and which skills, may need additional support. Sorry, water. The first step is choosing a time that works for your child and your family. So, you got a ton of vacations up, you got sports stuff going on, maybe there's some family stuff happening. Maybe not a good time to choose to start a toileting routine. So, consistency is easier when routines are relatively stable in your household. It's also important to prepare for accidents. So accidents are expected part of learning, and they don't mean that the process isn't working. So, in toilet training, you're going to have accidents. So that's something that you're going to have to accept. How are we going to prepare for those? All of that. So having extra clothes and supplies ready to help everyone stay calm and focused and clean up the mess can be very important. Whenever possible, try to get everyone involved on the same page. So, maybe they're attending daycare, maybe they're attending school. Children learn more quickly when caregivers respond in similar ways and follow the same general plan across settings. And then finally, focusing on progress rather than perfection, right? So toilet training is a learning process, and small improvements are definitely worth celebrating. So success often comes from many small steps that build over time instead of one just big breakthrough. After we're prepared for our toilet training, I'm going to ask you as a behavior analyst to start taking some data. So before we build a toileting schedule, it's helpful to spend a few days collecting information about your child's patterns. So many children already have predictable times when they are more likely to be wet or dry or have a bowel movement. So tracking all of this helps us discover those patterns and develop a schedule where we're not guessing. So start by checking regularly throughout the day and recording what you see. It's not complicated, we're just gathering simple information. So as you collect the data, record things like wet, dry, bowel movements, successful toilet trips, and any time your child independently indicates they want to go to the bathroom. The more specific in the notes you can be, it can be helpful. So after a few days of this information, you'll notice patterns, right? So are there times when your child is consistently dry? Are there times when it's more likely that an accident is going to happen? Do bowel movements tend to occur at the same time each day? So once we begin to see these patterns, we can use this information to collect a schedule. Let's go to the next slide. And these are some examples of wet dry data sheets that I have. If you're interested in any of these data sheets, my email will be at the end of it. You can just shoot me an email and I'm happy to forward over the slide or any of the data sheets from the presentation as well. Um, oh, sorry, go back. Thank you. So each row of this data sheet represents a time when you checked your child's toileting status. So at each check, mark whether your child is wet, dry, or has a bowel movement, right? So 7 a.m., dry, no notes. 7:30, wet. And 9 a.m., bowel movement, right? So the note section can be helpful for recording things that may affect toileting, such as, they just drank a lot of water or they had a meal or anything like that. So many families find it easy to keep the sheet on a clipboard, and multiple caregivers can record it at once. That's perfect. So once we have a few days of that data, we can look at these trends. We can start building our toileting schedule. So the goal isn't to pick a schedule at random. We're using the data we collected to identify when success is most likely. So in this example on the slide, the child was staying dry for about 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the time of day. So that gives us a starting point for planning toilet trips. So we created, a schedule of trying every 45 to 60 minutes. When you're first teaching, it's usually better to schedule trips slightly before you expect an accident rather than waiting until one occurs. So this creates more opportunity for successful toilet use. You'll also want to consider like natural times throughout the day, such as like after meals, after having like a drink, and before leaving the house or bedtime. These are natural times where you might prompt your child to use the bathroom. So remember that the schedule, it can seem very overwhelming to be like, Ben, we're gonna use the bathroom every 45 minutes, every 30 minutes. We're gonna spend all day in the bathroom. Yes, that is true. But the schedule is not permanent. It's simply based on our best estimate given the information that we have. So we want to just make sure that the child is having a lot of success in the toilet before we start to thin the schedule. And we'll talk a little bit more about thinning the schedule later. So as you continue collecting data, we'll make adjustments, as I said, and if your child is staying dry for longer periods, we can gradually increase the time between trips, and we're going to talk about, different ways to assess that. So successful toilet training is an ongoing process of observing, teaching, and adjusting. So this data helps us make those decisions on what is actually happening rather than relying on the guesswork. So the most important thing at this stage is creating enough success, as I said, and once success becomes more consistent, we can work on greater independence. Perfect. We can go to the next slide. And so this is the data sheet that I transfer to when we're actually implementing the toileting schedule. Um, so each time your child has a scheduled toilet trip, you record the time and what happened essentially. So was the trip successful? Did they sit but not go? Was there an accident? Also note whether the trip was prompted by an adult or the child self-initiated. So again, if you're interested in any of these data sheets, just send me an email. So at first, most of these trips will probably be prompted. You're following your schedule, and that's completely expected. So early success often looks like more successful toilet trips, fewer accidents, and longer periods of staying dry. So as the learning continues, we want to see a few important changes in our data. So firstly, successful toilet trips should gradually become more common than accidents. We should see the child voiding in the toilet more than they are having accidents. And second, your child should begin staying drier for longer periods of time as well. And then third, we want to see, some self-initiation in the data. That doesn't always happen with all children, but we love to see it when it does, and we want to encourage, this self-initiation. Yeah. Okay, how do we actually run this toilet programming? What do I do? So once we have the schedule, it's in place, we do all that. Um, we're going to put it into practice. So at each scheduled trip, calmly bring your child to the bathroom. The goal is to make the trip part of a routine rather than something that only happens, on accident or once in a while. So we're going to follow that schedule. When your child sits on the toilet, we're going to keep the sit brief and we're going to keep it very positive. So some children need extra, they need books or different things to be motivated to sit on the toilet, and that's something that you can problem solve yourself. But some children will just sit on the toilet. but we do want to keep it brief, 1 to 3 minutes. And then we can adjust on our child's success. So some children may pee or void immediately upon sitting on the toilet, and other children may need to sit a little bit longer than 3 minutes, depending on where they are in the learning process. So if your child urinates or has a bowel movement in the toilet, we're going to provide reinforcement right away. And what does that mean? It's a party. It's a party in the bathroom. We're going to immediately reinforce. And this helps build the connection between using the toilet and positive outcomes. So I use the toilet, something good happens essentially. And we'll talk a little bit more in the next slide about what reinforcement is. So, yes, perfect. Okay, so reinforcement is one of the most important parts of teaching toileting or any skill. So when a child experiences success in the toilet, we want to make that success meaningful and worth repeating for them. So the first key principle is timing. So reinforcement should happen as soon as possible after the successful behavior. The closer the reinforcement is to the success, the easier it is for the child to make the connection between what they did and what is going to happen next, which hopefully is like the good thing that they want. The second principle is choosing reinforcement that actually motivates your child. So different children are motivated by different things. So some children are motivated by praise. Woo, you did a good job. You peed in the potty. Great work, or whatever it is. Others may be motivated by favorite toys, like iPads or different activities. Some children are motivated by specific snacks, right, that they can have access to when they void in the toilet, or time with a preferred person, things like that. So thinking about things that may motivate or reinforce your child is a really important step of this program as well. It's also important to recognize that learning happens gradually. So success isn't only eliminating in the toilet, like we talked about. So many smaller skills help build towards that goal. So for some children, early successes may be just a willingness to enter the bathroom. Woo, you entered the bathroom. You came in the bathroom with me. Good job. It might be sitting on the toilet for a brief second or increasing that time that they're sitting on the toilet. It might be communicating a need or remaining dry between scheduled trips. So all of these smaller trips may also be worthy of reinforcement when you are engaging in a toilet training program. Perfect. Next slide. Thank you. Accidents, everyone's favorite. Accidents are a normal part of learning, and most children will have accidents while they are developing toilet training skills. I always tell families, some families are reluctant to toilet train their children, and then they get older into their teens, and they're like, it's gonna be a big mess. Or even when they're like 8 or 9, the accidents are gonna. I'm always like, the accidents are going to get larger the older they get. So start when they are young. Um, so an accident does not mean the program is failing or that the child can't learn this skill. So when accidents happen, the first step is to just remain calm. Try to keep your response neutral and matter of fact. So children often pick up on our emotions or our frustrations, and they can make the process more stressful for everyone. So next is going to clean up the accident as simply and efficiently as possible. So depending on your child's age and abilities, they can participate in changing clothes or helping with the cleanup routine. But the goal here is to teach them self-care. It's not to make the cleanup unpleasant or aversive to them. It's not to say you did something wrong, now you need to clean up. It's just to say, hey, we're dirty, we need to clean up and change our clothes. If they have the ability to help you change, that's great. If not, we'll have to assist with that. So research has moved away from older, more punishment-based approaches, things like overcorrection. So you have an accident, you have to visit the toilet over and over again. This is where you pee. Reprimands, positive practice, things like that. So instead, the focus is on reinforcement, teaching, and creating as many successful opportunities for avoiding in the toilet as possible. So after the cleanup is complete, return to your regular toileting schedule, avoid any lengthy discussions about the accident, and avoid treating it as a major event. The focus should stay on the next opportunity for success. So remember that accidents are still providing us information. So it's still data. If accidents are happening frequently, it may mean that the schedule needs adjusting, your child needs more opportunities for practice, or there may be other factors affecting success that we need to look at. So all that data is going to help us guide that. Underpants. So many toilet training programs recommend moving from diapers to underwear once active training begins. And the reason is that underwear provide natural feedback that diapers are designed to prevent. So modern diapers are very good at keeping children dry and comfortable. While that's helpful in many situations, it can make it harder for some children to notice the connection between using the bathroom and staying dry. So underwear allows children to experience the natural sensation of being wet or soiled, and so that sensation can become an important part of the learning opportunity. So over time, many children begin to notice the feeling and learn to use the toilet before accidents happen. This is one way children start developing awareness of their body signals. They begin connecting the feeling of needing to go, staying dry, and successfully using the toilet. It's important to remember that accidents will happen when using underwear. So that's expected, and it doesn't mean anything is wrong, as I said in the previous slide. The goal is not to avoid accidents completely. The goal is, again, to create opportunities for learning. So, that being said, every child is different, and some children transition to underwear right away, where others may need a more gradual approach. The important thing is choosing a strategy that supports learning and is implemented consistently. So, if you move from diapers to underwear, continue collecting data as well. So, the increase in accidents early on is often part of the learning process and will help us identify patterns. Okay. Teaching bathroom requests. So once children are becoming successful with scheduling toilet trips, we begin focusing on helping them communicate. So for some children, this is spoken words such as bathroom or potty. It can be a picture card. It can be their augmentative communication device, or even taking an adult by the hand and leading them to the bathroom. So the communication method is not the goal. The goal is helping the child successfully communicate that they need to use the bathroom before an accident occurs. So one mistake families sometimes make is always announcing it's potty time and bringing the child to the bathroom without giving them an opportunity to communicate. So while that can help establish a routine, it doesn't necessarily teach the child how to request. So instead, when a scheduled bathroom trip is approaching, try creating a brief pause for communication. So bring your child to the bathroom, stand outside, create a brief pause. See if they say toilet, bathroom, label it or whatever. So pause for a second. If the child requests independently, praise them, say, yeah, we're going to go to the bathroom. And if they don't respond independently, you can provide a prompt of whatever it's going to be. So that could be, say, I need to go to the bathroom. It could also be pointing to a picture card, things like that. Perfect. Next slide, please. So when your child initiates a bathroom trip, your response matters. So the first step is to go to the bathroom right away. So if they ask for the bathroom, we're going right away. Your words are meaningful and I am listening to you. So if a child takes the time to communicate their need, we want them to learn that asking gets them what they want. So delaying finishing another task first or asking them to wait can make that connection less clear between their words and getting to use the bathroom. We're going to praise them, as I said. So let your child know exactly what they did well. So, for example, great job telling me you needed to use the bathroom. So, really saying what they did well and that you liked it. If you're using reinforcement, this is a time to provide it. So, if you have, sorry, additional reinforcement, like you're using edibles or preferred toys, those are all times to provide it. Great job. Let's use your iPad or in the bathroom or whatever it is. So consistency is important. So every time your child independently requests the bathroom, try to respond in a positive and predictable way. And when the behavior reliably leads to success, children are more likely to repeat it in the future. After we have some consistency in communication, how do we fade these prompts? So on the previous slide, we talked about teaching bathroom requests and reinforcing these self-initiations. This slide focuses on what happens after a child is successfully using a request. We want to avoid creating a situation where the child only asks to use the bathroom when someone else prompts them first. So a helpful guideline is to use the least amount of assistance needed for success. So you may start with a full verbal prompt, such as say, I need to go potty. If the child is successful with that level of support, you can begin fading to a partial verbal prompt, such as I need to go, and then continuing to fade that. So as the child becomes more successful, you can reduce support further by a gesture, such as pointing to the bathroom, pointing to a picture, or pointing to an icon on their AAC device. So eventually, the goal is for the child to request independently without any prompting at all. It's important not to rush this process. So move to the next level only when your child is consistently successful at the current level. If independence decreases or accidents increase, it's completely okay to return to a higher level of support or prompting. And so you can denote this on the previous data sheet that we talked about when we're talking about, independent requesting. So you can, if they request, you can say, yes, they requested using a partial prompt or whatever it is. And you can see how you're systematically fading those prompts over time. Schedule fading. So this is a big one. At the beginning of toilet training, we often create a lot of opportunities for success by taking the child to the bathroom on a very frequent schedule. The goal is not to keep that schedule forever. It would be unsustainable. So over time, we want to gradually increase the amount of time between trips so the child begins to rely on both more on their own body signal. Sorry. So the key word here is gradually. We don't usually jump from every 30 minutes to every 2 hours overnight. Instead, we make small changes and continue monitoring the data. So many families always ask, when do I know it's time to increase? And the answer comes back to the data that we've been collecting. If successful toilet trips are happening consistently, accidents are becoming less frequent or aren't happening at all, and the child is staying dry for longer periods, those are good signs that we may be ready to increase the interval between trips. So there's no single rule that works for every child. Some programs suggest increasing the interval after a certain number of successful trips to the toilet, such as 3, 5, or 10 consecutive successes. Others may look for several days of success before making a change. The exact decision should be based on the child's individual data rather than any sort of arbitrary number. So, for example, if a child is consistently successful at 45 minutes, and staying dry between those trips, we might increase that interval to 60 minutes. If success continues, we might increase that to 75 and then 90 and then so on. So small changes are usually easier than, large ones all at once. So the toileting data sheet becomes especially important during this stage as you review the data, look for trends such as longer periods of staying dry, more successful trips to the toilet, fewer accidents, and increased self-initiations or requests to use the bathroom. Teaching bowel movements. Okay, so many toileting programs don't specifically mention bowel movements or they're often overlooked during toilet training. So for many families, they find that urination and bowel movements do not progress at the same rate. And it is very common for a child to become successful with urination in the toilet first while continuing to have accidents or difficulties with bowel movements. So this is a normal pattern and does not mean that toilet training has failed. So typically we have a lot more practice at voiding or urinating in the toilet. We have a lot more opportunities to do it throughout the day than we do with bowel movements. So just through that exposure of having more practice of that and less practice of bowel movements, sometimes it moves at a different rate than when we learn to void in the toilet. So one of the recommendations from literature is to pay close attention to bowel movements. So unlike urination, bowel movements often occur relatively predictable at predictable times of the day. So many children tend to have bowel movements after meals, so particularly maybe after breakfast or dinner. And because of this, collecting information about when bowel movements occur can help create more effective toileting schedules. So as you're tracking wet and dry, also record when bowel movements happen and whether they occurred in the toilet or elsewhere. So after several days, you might notice a pattern and then you can prompt during these times. The same teaching principles we talked about throughout the presentation apply for bowel movements. We want to create opportunities for success and we want to provide reinforcement when that success occurs. And we also want to avoid any sort of punishment or aversive procedures for accidents. Okay, when progress stalls. So sometimes families notice that progress suddenly slows down or stops during toilet training. So one important thing to monitor for is withholding. So some children may begin holding urine or bowel movements for very long periods of time during training. So families may notice fewer accidents, but also fewer successful trips to the toilet. This can sometimes happen because toileting feels uncomfortable, stressful, or unfamiliar, or there's something physically difficult about it. So that's something to keep in mind and to monitor when you're doing it. Constipation is especially important to monitor as well because it can significantly affect urinary continence and overall toileting success. So if your child is feeling constipated, it can be, harder for them to hold their urine for longer periods of time. And children who are constipated may have difficulty recognizing their body signals or relaxing enough to use the toilet when they are on the toilet. So if you notice signs of withholding, discomfort, pain, or stalled progress, it's important to speak with your child's doctor or healthcare professional before increasing any demands or intensifying toilet training. Again, another plug for home management, our program here at Community Living Toronto. So, you can also find collaboration with registered behavior analysts who can help support these schedules and brainstorm some ideas around some of these behaviors that may be reducing success in the toilet. Key takeaways. So first, toileting is not a single skill. It involves many different skills. So recognizing body signals, communicating needs, getting to the bathroom, managing clothing, using the toilet, and completing hygiene routines. So children may need support for different parts of this process. So figuring out where your child needs support. Second, collecting simple information about your child's toileting patterns can help guide decisions. So this data allows us to create schedules based on what is actually happening rather than just relying on guesswork. Third, reinforcement is one of the most important teaching tools we have. So celebrating success and providing meaningful rewards helps children learn more quickly. Fourth, accidents are a normal part of learning. So responding calmly and focusing on the next opportunity for success is usually more effective. And then fifth, our goal is independence. As children become more successful, we gradually reduce prompts and increase the time between scheduled bathroom trips. And that is all for today. That is my email there. And I see we have some questions in the chat, so I'm just going to get it open. Is it possible to get the slides on the email we registered? Yeah, I think someone can make that happen, or I can email, if you email me directly on the slides, I can send them to you.
Also, we recorded the presentation,
Yeah.
so that will be available after.
Okay, so if you do want the slides, if you could just put my email back up,
Yeah, 1 second, sorry.
that's
Or I
okay.
can just put it in the chat, actually.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you all for spending your lunchtime with me and talking about toilet training. I know it's not always the most fun lunchtime activity. But yes, we will probably do some more series later with the TDSB and George Webster, so you can look out for those. And again, if you are looking for any help with toileting, sleep, or any other behavioral or skill issues that you have with your child that has an intellectual or developmental disability, we are here to help. And as I said before, it is a free service. So I always say our wait list should be like 1,000 people, but I think it's only like 10 people. So please fill out those forms and come to us if you need any assistance, okay?
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks,
Have a good day, everyone.
Take
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Hannah.